Woohoo! Welcome back. Tonight we're going to be talking about inequalities. Woohoo! And where we're going to start with this is just either a review or possibly an introduction to the various ways an inequality can be written. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start off with, say, the inequality x is less than 3, which is pronounced x is less x is less than 3. Now this can be graphed, and in my class we always talk about finding 0. You can put 0 wherever you like, and then I'm going to put 3 over here. 3 lies to the right of 0. As soon as you put 2 values on your graph, you've set the scale. So be careful about putting a third point in. You have to be very careful where all the other points go. So the graph for this, x is less than 3, is frequently written with a parenthesis that sits right on the 3, and then you emphasize, and let me see if I have a good pen for this, one that you'd be able to see. It will lie to the left of the parenthesis like that, or it's also possible to write it as an open circle, and then you color in the left side of the graph, because it's everything strictly less than 3, but not including 3. Then we've got something called interval notation. So interval notation says that you basically start at the beginning point, you write the beginning and the end. Now, when we're talking about x being less than 3, if we look over to the left, it keeps going. This arrow keeps going to the left. There is no beginning point. So to represent this, we write in negative infinity. We're not saying that is a number. We're saying it's a concept. You start at the smallest possible number, which is basically a concept, not an actual number. So we start at negative infinity and we go all the way up to 3. And then we do not include 3. So there's a parenthesis there. Then we've got something called set builder notation, or sometimes just called set notation. And this, depending on what class you're taking, sometimes this isn't even used. Generally, we use the brace. It's this fancy guy. Everyone draws it a little bit differently. And it has a lot of different possible styles. The simplest one would look just like this: x such that x is less than 3. It can also be written a little more fancily. You could say x is an element of the set of real numbers such that x is less than 3. And there are a couple other ways to do it. It is possible to put the x as an element of the set of real numbers over on the right-hand side. So different people have different ways of writing it, and just pay attention. Different books will have different expectations, but each of the ways has benefits, downsides. This one's kind of nice because it's pretty basic and it would be acceptable to most folks. This carries a little more information, etc. And the idea behind all of these different representations is that you should be able to see any of these, and from whichever one you see, be able to come up with all the rest. So for example, if I gave you the interval notation, you should know that that represents x is less than 3, be able to graph it and write set notation. If you saw this graph right here, you should be able to come up with the rest of them. So you've got a lot of different ways to all represent the same concept. Woohoo! Which is, I'm looking for all the numbers which are less than 3. So all of these, anything that's negative, 0, and any of the positives up till 3. Okay, so then what happens if I underline the less than? If I underline it, and I see that that's hard to see in the video, but it becomes x is less than or equal to 3. And that means that you're going to include all the numbers that we have here that are less than 3 and also include 3. So we have a slightly different way of writing it. Again, I'm going to find 0 and 3, and they're wherever I decide to put them. But on the 3, I'm going to make a new symbol, and that's a bracket instead of a parenthesis. And I'm going to include all of these points to the left all the way up to 3. Now, in this same way, there is another way to write it, and that's 0 and that's 3. The other way to write it would be with a filled in dot. So this is an open point. And this is a closed point. So we've got open and closed. Open generally means a strict less than. Closed means you've got an equals to on the end. Interval notation is going to look a lot like this. We're going to start all the way to the left, which is negative infinity. We're going to go all the way up to 3. And then we're going to stop with a bracket. This is called a bracket instead of the parenthesis. And that tells us that we're including the 3 in our interval. The set builder notation, again, x. And then this guy right here is called such that. That's how you pronounce it. X such that x is less than or equal to 3. And all the possible variations that you would like. So x is an element of the set of real numbers such that x is less than or equal to 3, and yada, yada, yada. So lots of options there. And this is the inequality x is less than or equal to 3. So this has one extra answer above this one. So hopefully you can look at these two and see the difference. With the bracket and the parenthesis, some people ask, well, how do you tell the difference between the bracket and the parenthesis? And what I do is I see that when I have a parenthesis and I have my 3 standing in the parenthesis, I imagine that it's actually pretty slidey. And so I imagine that the 3 flies right out. Whereas, so this is 3 is not included because it falls right out. Too slippery. Versus, if the 3 is sitting here or standing here in a bracket, the 3 is perfectly happy, stays in there. It's got a nice solid place to stand. 3 is included. So that's the big difference. Parenthesis, the 3 flies out. The bracket, the 3 stands there. So, woohoo. Okay, so what if, dun dun dun, we go to this one. Now we've got an x, we've got a 3, but we've got this guy. And this guy says x is greater than 3. So this one, I would find my 0, I would find my 3, but I'm going to be on the other side of 3. I'm actually going to be the set of numbers bigger than 3. I'm going to use a parenthesis again because this is not underlined. It's not greater than or equal to. It's strictly greater than. Or, just like I did before, I could have the 0 and the 3 and an open point like that. And then I just color into the right like that. Now here, my interval notation is going to be really different. Because remember, interval notation, we're going to start on the left and read to the right. We always start on the left, the L. This hand makes the L. Left to right. And so in the interval notation, the first point I get to is 3, but it's not included. So I start with the 3 in the parenthesis and then basically keep going forever. and our way to write the concept of forever, infinity. Not a number, just a concept. And again, set builder notation, although it is the weirdest one, so it's the one people are like, oh, I'm so scared of this. In fact, right now, when you're just learning it and you don't have a lot of stuff to put in there, it's really kind of straightforward. You have to write the braces. Did I write that these are braces? Let me write that because I haven't written it above there. So the braces, you write the X, you write the such that, which means so that, it's just math. And then you write the inequality. And as you go further in math, there will be more stuff that goes into both sides. Lots and lots. We can, this is like, this is like the Subaru of mathematical symbols. Everything will go in the trunk. There's tons of stuff. Lots of storage. Woohoo. It, handles great in the snow. Okay, so we're going to pretend that this inequality did not print on this page. What? I don't see. Is that a pterodactyl? Oh my gosh, look, a pterodactyl. Don't pay any attention to the mistake on the paper. So let's just go ahead and write that inequality over here. So you probably can guess what we have left. If you didn't catch it before I whited it out, the inequality we're going to work with is x is greater than or equal to 3. And so again, I'm going to have my 0, I'm going to have my 3, and because it's equal to 3 is an option, 3 is included, so I'm going to use a bracket, and then I'm going to color it in to the right of the 3. Or if I've got my 0 and my 3, I do my filled in point, my closed point. And I'm going to fill it in to the right. And what I do in class, and I'm not sure it will work so well on the video, but let me give it a try. People say, well, how do I tell the difference between, how do I remember which one is the filled in one, which one's the not filled in one? And what I say is if you take your hand, if you close your hand, the pen stays in it. So the point stays in if it's closed. If you open, the pen falls right out. So the point falls right out if it's an open circle. So closed circle means you include the 3. Open circle means it falls right out. Okay, interval notation. Again, we start with the 3, and it's in a bracket because it is included, and we go all the way to infinity. And set builder notation, x such that x is greater than or equal to 3. And again, that's for now. Later on, there will be tons and tons of stuff you can pack into this. But for now, that's fine. It's their lovely little starter set builder notation. Okay, next up. Dum, dum, dum. Sometimes you get inequalities like this one, which have 2 numbers. And x is that delicious little sandwich in the middle. So this is -2 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 1. And you can also say -2 less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 1. You can put in the word which is if you want. You don't have to. If both, so first off, this is a double inequality or let's go with double inequality. And this is also called if they're both less than or equal to, this is called a closed interval because they both have equals to on it. What I find easy about this one is you don't have to worry about 0 or 3. You just find the 2 points. One is -2, one is 1. You start at -2, it's got a bracket because there's an equals there. You go to 1, it's also got a bracket because there's an equals there, and you color in between it. Which I think, personally, is sometimes easier than worrying about infinity and negative infinity. Interval notation, once you've got the graph down, start at -2, go all the way up to 1. And then set builder notation, again, x such that -2 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 1. And you could do all the other fancy stuff if you'd like. So that's a closed interval. And then the last one we're going to talk about, -4 is less than x is less than -1. Or you could even say x lies between -4 and -1. And this is because neither one has equals. This is called an open interval. And it works just like this one worked, except now this one's going to have parenthesis at -4, parenthesis at -1, and it's all filled in the middle. How do we know that x is in the middle? How do we fill it in the middle? X is literally in the middle. That's what it means. It's between these 2 points. The interval notation goes from -4 to -1, and the set builder notation goes like such. Woohoo! Now, are there other options? Absolutely. Could you have one of these double inequalities where one of them has a less than or equal to and the other one doesn't? Yes. So every time, every place where you have a less than or equal to, you will have a bracket. Everywhere you have a strictly less than, you will have a parenthesis. So just match up the parenthesis to the less than and the brackets to the less than or equal to. So for example, if I had -4 is less than x is less than or equal to -1, what would the interval be? Well, the interval would start at -4, go all the way up to -1. -4 is the one that has no equals, so that's an open, that's parenthesis. And -1, there is an equals, so you'd have a bracket like that. And that would be, I've heard of it either as a half open or a half closed interval. And some people just say it is just that interval. So that's it. Woohoo! You made it through the first part. So go get yourself a snack, get some hydration. Woohoo! Take a break, go look at something green. If you can, go look at the stars if it's dark outside. Enjoy the rain if it's raining. Pet some animals and, generally just know that I think you're awesome and amazing. And woohoo, and math on.